Welcome to Construction Genius. My guest today is Casey Gray. Casey is the founder of the award-winning sustainable building company, The Conscious Builder, as well as the host of the Conscious Builder podcast and the Conscious Builder show on YouTube. He has 2 decades of experience in construction, runs and owns his own construction company up in Ottawa, Canada. And we have a great conversation today around the importance of psychology for a construction company owner. Specifically, Casey's conviction is that your success is 80% psychology and 20% mechanics. And so we look at the importance of managing your own psychology, the psychology of your employees, and the psychology of your clients and suppliers, vendors, and subcontractors. So I think you'll find some real insights into how you can manage yourself, manage other people more effectively, and you'll have some takeaways that you can immediately apply to help you to improve your leadership. Thank you for listening and watching. If you are watching Construction Genius, feel free to give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Give us that 5-star review if you think we've earned it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your shows. And enjoy my interview today with Casey. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Casey, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. You know, we were chatting just offline a minute ago, and you have a conviction that success in business is 80% psychology and only 20% mechanics. And I kind of said, what? Wait a minute. Why do you think psychology is so important to the success of a construction entrepreneur?
Well, I think what we just experienced with the pandemic is a perfect example of that. I remember my wife is a child and family therapist, so she went to school, she got her master's in clinical psychology. And I remember when she started, I'm like, who needs that? We don't need that. But now, after being in business for over 10 years, I realize that everything I do is psychology. Whether I'm managing my own psychology, managing my employees' psychology, managing homeowners, subcontractors, everything is just dealing with people. And business, the success of business is based on the psychology of the leader.
Let me just interrupt you real quick. There's 3 things that I picked up there, and I want to dive into each one of them. I want to make sure that I get them because they're all important. Number 1, you've got your own psychology. Number 2, you've got your employee psychology. And then you have your client's psychology.
Yeah.
Okay?
And in my business, subcontractors too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right. Your clients and your subs and your suppliers. So let's talk about your own psychology first. What do you think the key is to managing your own psychology as a construction company owner?
I can share what I do for myself.
Please do.
And people probably won't want to do it. It's kind of like psychology, like our brain is a muscle, right? You can't go to the gym once and expect to be fit. You have to continuously work it out and practice. So what I do is I meditate daily. So every morning I meditate, but I also feed my mind positive things. I don't watch the news. I don't need to, right? If there's something big that happens, somebody will tell me about it. I'm not concerned about missing something. Pretty sure if I turned the news on now and turned it on 3 months ago, they'd be talking about the same thing. So I avoid the news because I believe that there is one thing that really helps with psychology is that environment is more powerful than willpower. We can willpower ourselves only so far, but if we create an environment where we're forced to succeed, that we're forced to think positively, then there's no doubt that we will succeed, right? So that's the people you surround yourself with, the things that you read, the things that you watch, all those things. So news, social media, all that falls into that same bucket. So avoid the news, avoid social media. Actually, if you look at your social media feed and you see what's coming up, there's algorithms. There's a good chance that if there's a lot of bad things on your social media feed, that's because you keep clicking on them, right? So there's a sign right there. The other thing, obviously, exercise is important. So all of that, motion is emotion, right? So making sure you stay fit. And a big thing is what you put into your body. because that will affect how your brain chemistry works. So eating healthy. And I'm very aware and conscious of what I put into my body. My wife takes good care of me, and we avoid a lot of food, right? We just don't buy it. It's easy to go for the chocolate, the junk food, right? But if you don't have it in your house, well, once again, we have an environment that forces us to succeed.
Okay, so that's very interesting there, because it's so fundamental that there's things that we can do outside of ourselves in our environment that can change our inner lives. And sometimes we try so hard to make those changes, but we don't set ourselves up for success because the environment is not the right one. I want to take you back to this idea of meditation. And again, this is a construction podcast, so don't glaze your eyes over it yet, guys. I want to ask you why you do that. What are you looking to achieve when you meditate? What is that all about?
I'm looking for clarity, ultimately, and focus. So if you think of your mind as a lake, right? And a lake can be choppy when it's wind or there's a bunch of boats going by. And just imagine even throwing a pebble. So think of a lake and throwing a pebble into that. Every pebble that drops into that creates a ripple effect, right? So imagine every thought was a pebble, a ripple. So the idea is to clear all of that so that you get rid of all the wakes from the water so that you can see the bottom.
Okay.
So that's the way I see the mind. So does that mean that when I sit down, I just forget all my thoughts? And no. So the thing to remember, I've been doing this for a long time now. And one of the businesses that I help with, my wife's business, is meditation studio. Is the idea behind it is not to stop thinking. That's impossible. That's what our brain is designed for. It's supposed to think. The idea is to not attach to those thoughts. So what does that mean? That means that the thoughts that I have, the thoughts that you have, are probably the same thoughts that everybody else is having, right? We're concerned about money, right? COVID, getting sick, being healthy. All these thoughts, all these fears that we might have are the same thoughts that everybody else is having. So they're not our thoughts. They are just thoughts. That's what our brain does. Our brain is there to protect us, right? So the idea is to not attach. It's to be like, oh, that's interesting, and move on to the next one. And when you can do that, you can start to get clarity and focus.
So clarity and focus, that's why you do it.
Yes.
So it's interesting to me because there's so many different types of meditation and different ways of going about it. I have my own spiritual practice. I dedicate a good hour at least in the morning to getting ready for my day, to, in prayer and in reading. And in your experience, how does that practice actually help you in the day-to-day decisions that you make and in the success of your business?
So what I've realized is that there's days that I meditate, some days that I don't. The days that I don't, I realize that I just feel flustered. Like I'm kind of all over the place, right? And I get frustrated more easily if something comes up, because that's the thing, is that there's always something that's going to come up, not necessarily just with business. It could just be with life, right? Maybe my son hurt himself, right? Maybe my truck got broken into. It could be anything, right? So the thing is that there's always going to be something that happens. And when I don't continue this practice, those things that inevitably happen throw me off. Yep. And then I start to spin.
So really the preparation before the day is vital to how you handle the pressures of the day. And we know that all of construction is problem solving. And so those problems are going to come. And what you're saying is that the meditation practice helps you to handle those in a more effective manner.
Absolutely. We all think we have control, right? We think we can control people. We think we control what's going to happen. But the only thing that we really have control over, if we're honest with ourselves, is our thoughts, right? Is how we react or act in any given situation. So by doing this practice, I have more control over how I'm going to act and react, ultimately because of my thoughts that happen in those situations. And by starting with that, you're kind of starting your day in control, realizing that you can control yourself. So when all those things happen that you can't control, you continue to come back to the fact that you have control. So by starting your day in control, you can manage yourself when all those things that are out of your control happen.
See, that's fundamental right there. And that's why I think it's so vital in the morning to begin not with your social media feed or with your email feed, because that immediately introduces things into your mind over which you do not have control or complete control. But some sort of spiritual practice really helps you to begin, like you said very well, in control every day, so that you can better handle the adversity that you face throughout the day.
Yeah. And I think that's the word that you use there, spiritual practice. It doesn't have to be meditation, right? It can be whatever works for you. And for me, it's meditation. For you, it's your spiritual practice. It could be walking, right? Just going for a walk and breathing. It's whatever. You need to start somewhere, though.
Yeah. And I think it's fundamental, though, because I think you very well mentioned the importance of the spiritual practice, the importance of nutrition, the importance of exercise. And this is not like mumbo jumbo, wooey stuff. This is very practical ways that you can manage the machine of your body and your soul so that you can be more effective as a leader of a company.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we began with managing your own self. I'd like to move on now. What do you think are some of the keys for a construction CEO in terms of managing their employees or leading their employees?
It kind of comes back to, once again, the psychology from the beginning, right? So you have to lead by example. There's by taking control of yourself and showing up with presence and in a good state and being able to manage that state, that will show them that you're in control. Because I think a lot of people, like, not everyone's built to be an entrepreneur or business owner. There's a lot of people out there that maybe think they're entrepreneurs, but maybe they're just a one-person show, right? To me, that's just a full-time job. That's not necessarily entrepreneurship. That's a different story. But if you have a construction company, you're managing a lot of people, and they need to know that you're in control. One of the reasons they're working for you is because they don't want to have those concerns about where's the work coming from or solving certain problems. Obviously, you hire certain people to solve certain problems, but when shit really hits the fan, sorry, I don't know if we can swear on your podcast here, but when something hits the fan, they're going to ultimately come back to you.
Let me just interrupt you there. This idea of leading by example, tell me exactly what you mean by leading by example.
I think you have to walk your talk. It's ultimately what it comes down to, right? Like Mahatma Gandhi said, it's all about leading by example. My son is my greatest teacher. He just turned 7 this past weekend, but he's been my greatest teacher in life by far because he does what I do, not what I say.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Employees are going to be the same. If you show up and you're doing one thing and you're asking your employees to do something else, what do you think is going to happen?
When you say leading by example, I think of, being willing to do whatever needs to be done and diving in and all that kind of stuff. That's part of it. How do you think a leader can balance that leading by example and not fall into micromanaging or taking off of people's plates things that they need to be doing?
Yeah. So leading by example doesn't mean doing other people's work.
Okay.
Right. So I think you teach people how to treat you as well. So if I've hired somebody to do the job, I'm not going to do that for them. Right. I'll support them where they need support, but I'm not going to just take over and do it for them. That's the last thing that I want to do. The idea is that person needs to do a certain part of it because I only have so many hours in a day and there's a million other things that I need to do. So I need to be able to teach that person how to do that thing. So part of what we do is we have to create systems and processes.
Right.
And if somebody's not delivering on their job, what you hire them to do, well, it could be either they're not good at it, or maybe they just didn't have the resources available to them. If it's a resources thing, well, then I have to take responsibility for that. But if they're just not delivering on what we thought that they could do, well, that's a whole different story. But we're not going to come in there and just get it done for them. Well, I don't expect perfection from people. I always like the word I like to use is mastery. And that's part of what's on our website too. It's not about being perfect because perfect is impossible. It's not going to happen. It's probably the lowest standard you can set for yourself because it's not possible. But I do expect mastery. I expect people to get better. It's okay to make a mistake. We're human. We're always going to make mistakes. I make mistakes every single day. But we don't want to be making the same mistakes over and over again. So if you make a mistake, great, let's learn from it, let's fix it, and let's move on and continue and to make sure we don't do it again.
So let me ask you this. I work with a lot of executives who are very good builders. They're tremendous project managers. They can take a project that's 30, 40, $50 million up to, a large project, and they just run it like a machine. And their executives, the CEO looks at that person and says, man, that guy, that gal, they're going to be a project executive with people reporting to them. They step up into that role and they really struggle then to get out of the project building and move into the people building mindset. What have you found is useful to help someone make that shift?
Well, first you need to make sure that they want to make the shift. Right? So just because they're a good here, this is what I don't deal with $50 million projects, but we're dealing with $1 million, $2 million projects. Yep. But either way, there's the carpenters who are very good at doing carpentry work. And naturally you think the next role is to move up into like site supervisor role. But the thing is that when they move from the carpenter role into that site supervisor role, is that they're doing less carpentry and more supervision, and they've never done supervision before. So if somebody wants to move into that role, that's the first step. Well, then they'll be willing to learn and start talking about the psychology stuff that we've been talking about, because they realize that they have to manage other people. However, I've also had people step up into that role, realize that, you know what, that's not what I want. I want to do more carpentry work. So then they're really good employees. So we found a position for them. So there's still, I have one guy that's been with me over 5 years now. He didn't want to run jobs anymore. He's really good finish carpenter. So he basically goes around and he finishes all of our projects, and he's amazing at it. He does a good job. So I think one of my roles is to find, first of all, you got to find the people with, the good psychology, right? We can train a lot of the other carpentry stuff, but find people with the right mindset, and then you can find the right position that suits what they want to do.
Now, see, that's fundamental. I just want to make this point here. So I'm the owner or CEO of a construction company. I see someone talented. I see where I want them to go, but you've got to ask that question first. Do they want to make the shift? And exactly. I think you really pointed it out well, that they may think they want to make it, but then afterwards they find out that they don't. And that's when you need to manage the movement of them into the right position without damaging their morale or damaging their reputation in the organization or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And because we all know, especially those guys who run those big companies, they know how expensive it is to bring on new people. Yep. Right. So if you can keep the people who already know and like the company and just move them into a position that suits them, then why not?
So in terms of managing your employees, we've covered that, managing yourself. Now let's move on to this idea, the psychology behind managing clients. What have you found to be most effective in terms of managing clients? And you're kind of in an interesting space being in the residential, because I just went through a bit of a remodel, and I wasn't the best client for the guy who was doing work for me. I've got to be honest. So what do you do to manage the psychology of your clients?
It's funny. People change when it comes to their own house,
right?
Right. So it's like the biggest investment that they're ever going to make. So I think that's the first thing, is that understanding that it's not just a house, it's their home, right? So, and everybody's different. So, well, number one, you got to smile, first of all. But I think if you can show up and put a little bit of humor into it, a big thing is, there's two things, right? They have to trust you and they need to like you. And hopefully they trust you and like you, and that's why they hired you. Right. But sometimes they might have hired you because you're the cheapest bidder. We don't do that, right? So one of the things that we've realized is that we're not necessarily the best contractor for every homeowner out there. And we've turned away work. I just turned one away recently where I just wasn't getting a good feeling, and just said, you know what? I don't think this is right for us. We're going to kindly step down, and all the best with your project.
I think this is fundamental here. Because we talk about managing clients, and immediately, what pops into our head is the client that sucks, right? But what you're saying here is one of the ways that you can effectively manage clients is make sure that you've got the right client in the first place.
Yeah, which is easier said than done.
Yes. Yes, but I think what a lot of construction companies struggle with is that they either don't know who their right client is in the right project, or they know it, but for whatever reason, if it's ego or desperation, whatever the fact is, they take on projects consistently with either the wrong client, the wrong project type, or the wrong location.
Exactly. And the money can definitely play a factor, right? So when you're in business, sometimes you just need to make money. But I think what's important to realize is that when you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to another thing. So there's so many times where I've said the world works in mysterious ways, right? So you'll say no to something and you're going to be like, well, where's the next project going to go? And all of a sudden it comes right up. And even there's some weeks, like a couple of guys have been with me for a while. They're like, well, I got a light week next week. I'm like, don't worry, something will likely come up. And it always does, right? Either an existing past client says, hey, my basement just flooded, or all of a sudden we get an emergency call for a roof leaking on just a small repair to just keep them busy for a week before the big project starts, sort of thing, right?
Yep.
But there's always something that comes up where if you said yes to that other thing, you wouldn't have been able to say yes for this to this thing.
So you mentioned there, now particularly in the residential, I can understand that the psychology of it's not just the house, it's the home. What are some other ways that you manage subs, suppliers? What is some of the psychology there that you might share with us that would be a benefit?
There's a trick called like matching and mirroring, right? So you kind of mirror them, but that could be a few things. So what I find has helped is that obviously there's a lot of people that are a little rough around the edges in the construction world.
Yep.
And if you can meet them where they're at, like if they're yelling at you, sometimes you have to yell back, right? And then all of a sudden he goes, oh, or she goes, oh, he's like me. He's okay now, right? Yep. And then it can come back down, and then you can start to control the pace and the tone of the conversation. That's one way. And I think if you can continue to maintain a mutual respect, right? One of the lines that I use, at least when I'm dealing with subcontractors, is like, look, like I'm kind of the middle person, right? I want to build a relationship with you as a subcontractor, but I also need to make decisions that are in the best interest of the homeowner, right? And at the end of the day, I'm kind of the middle person. So how do we make this work? And I ask a lot more questions than what I tell people what to do. What would you do if you were in my position, right? If this happened, if you scratched the floor or somebody scratched the floor in your house and it was accident, how would you expect it to be taken care of?
Right. That's interesting. What you just said, I think, is really important, because particularly if I have a level of expertise in my trade or in my industry, sometimes I can be less likely to ask questions and spend a lot of time telling people. Why is it you think it's important to be asking more questions than to be, doing the talking or the telling?
When it comes to problems, I think questions are the number one way to solve them. If I show up, if there's a problem and I come up and I keep solving the problems for people, they're going to expect me to solve the problems. And they might not even like the solutions that I come up with, so they won't follow through with them. But if you get the other person to come up with the solution, or at least come up with ideas, and then that ends up being a part of the solution, well, they came up with the solution, so they're naturally going to want to make sure it works.
Excellent. Excellent. So we've been talking quite a bit about this, the importance of psychology, the 80% psychology versus 20% mechanics. So what if I just think it's all a bunch of baloney and this is just, blah, 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 blah. Let me just go out and build and make some money.
I guess it depends on what you define success, right?
Okay.
So if you just think success is making a lot of money, then sure, go out and do it. If you want to burn bridges and don't really care and want to just, be on an island by yourself with your pile of money, then by all means do it. But I think true success is mastery over oneself. So if you're able to actually be in a beautiful state during the day, right? If you're going through your day angry, but you have a ton of money, well, that's not really success in my mind, right? I'd rather be happy with no money than angry with a lot of money. And people might argue me on that, but that's up to you, right? You decide where you want to go. That's really what it comes down to. If you can master your mindset and you can actually go through your day and be happy and more importantly, fulfilled, right? Because what does happy mean? I think it's more about being fulfilled. Then I think you're successful. You need to define success for yourself.
So then what kind of exercise can someone go about in order to define success? What would you recommend? They may have some ideas in their head and, they kind of swim around in there and they're sort of kind of clear, but not that clear. What are some exercises someone could do to help with that?
Sitting down and getting quiet, like meditating. One quote that always stuck with me is men's problem stems from the fact that they're unable to sit in a dark room quietly by themselves.
Right.
I probably butchered it a little bit, but that's the gist of it. A little bit,
but that's good. You get the idea.
The idea is, I think you just need to sometimes just write it out. But I think the biggest thing is just taking action, right? And there's one thing that I've never been afraid of is to just take action and do something. And there's so many things that I've done that just doesn't work out, or that was a waste of money or waste of time, whatever it may be. But every time I've done something, I've learned. And right, either I've learned that it worked, or I learned that it didn't work, or maybe it worked 2 years ago. Now it's not working anymore. So now I need to go back to the drawing board. So I think it's always just moving forward and always taking action and realizing that it never stops. You're never going to be done. It's never going to be comfortable. The more uncomfortable you are, the better it is, most likely, right? Yep. And as soon as you get comfortable, maybe that means it's time for a change.
Yeah. I've heard you mention a couple of times your son and how your son is your greatest teacher. And we all know that, the challenges of building a business and balancing family life. What have you found to be helpful in terms of that tricky, I don't think balance is even the right word. I don't look at it being a balancing act. I look at it as sort of my life is a whole thing and I have various responsibilities that I need to work through. What do you do to manage that though, in terms of family and business?
Yeah, I agree with you. That's one thing my wife and I have talked a lot about. It's, life is never balanced. It's a teeter-totter. It's sometimes it teeters more on the family side, sometimes it teeters more on the work side. One thing I've come to realize too is that I'm still young, right? So I'm going to teeter on the work side. That's just naturally, this is the time that I have the energy and I want to work. So I'm going to work and I'm enjoying it right now. And you know what? In 10, 20 years from now, then when I'm a grandparent or something, who knows? Hopefully not 10 years from now, but
you're right.
Whatever then it maybe teeters back the other way. And obviously there's weeks that I take off and I get better at, shutting things off and so forth. But I think one thing is just the communication, right? So what does my wife need? What does my son need? And one thing I realized that when you're a kid, like it doesn't need to be a day or something. It could be half an hour. It could be an hour. Sure. Last night I went fishing with my son for an hour, right? That filled his cup for daddy time. He knows that I work, right? So he understands that, but he knows that he can walk through that door behind me anytime and ask me if something's really happening, right? And he needs to talk to me. So I think it's just setting those boundaries and understanding what you need as an individual, but also what your family needs, whoever that is, wife, daughter, husband, son, mom, dad, whoever happens to be important to you.
Friends, so how do you stay on the same page with your spouse?
Through lots of practice. Once again, it's communication, right? It's checking in. What do you need? Are you good? But for the most part, you can usually pick up on stuff, right? When you know something's not right, there's a time, you just need to find the right time to bring it up. One thing that's been a huge help for me is actually, it's a book called Beyond Mars and Venus.
Right.
What was the author? Last name Gray. He wrote Women Are From Venus, Men Are From Mars, the original one. So his newest book is Beyond Mars and Venus. Yeah. And that came out, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago or something like that. Uh-huh. That book was a huge help for me with my relationship.
John Gray.
So that book was a huge help to me because it gets into a little bit of the hormones, right? And understanding hormones, not only of women, but also of men, right? And knowing that like women have a very obvious cycle that they go through every 28 days, right? But if you can understand that cycle, you can understand how to communicate with your wife a lot better. So I know things about my wife will check in with me. She's like, I feel like I'm off right now. And I'll look at my calendar and be like, yeah, you're off. Right? But what that does is that may help make our relationship better because I know when to do certain things. Right? I know when to set up a date, when to plan a date. I know when she needs some time to herself and to not ask her to do anything. I know when she's more focused on work and more focused on family. But that's true also for men. And there's also activities. So understanding that there's certain activities that are testosterone building and there's certain activities that are estrogen building. Right. So talking, for example, builds estrogen. Listening builds testosterone. So if you can become a very good listener and allow your wife to talk, there's a very good chance you will really connect because she'll be building estrogen while she's talking, but she knows if you're listening or not. So you can't just have your eyes glazed over, right? So those are things like...
Can't be listening while you're on your phone, right?
Yeah. So that's all the psychology side. So we've been talking about psychology of business, but it's really psychology in life. But that has helped me understand other people within my circle of influence, so to speak, right? And the other people that I need to deal with on a regular basis.
That's interesting. I've never heard that listening builds testosterone. That's interesting.
Yeah. So like I said, that book has been a huge help. Taking the garbage out builds testosterone. Driving builds testosterone. Ever since I read that, now I have a reason to say, there's a reason why I always wanted to drive when we were in the car together, right? And she's fine with letting me drive all the time when we're together now, right? So there's never any concerns. Now, all that being said, John Gray, what he does go into in that book too, is that it doesn't necessarily mean that the man is the testosterone side of the relationship and the woman is the estrogen side. It could be flipped, right? There are women out there that are more on their male side and men out there that are more on the female side, right? So maybe that relationship works too.
Sure. Just summing up here, this whole idea of 80% psychology, 20% mechanics. I just want to go back to the beginning of our conversation in terms of managing your own psychology. Just give me an idea of what your ideal day looks like in terms of how you manage yourself.
Yeah. So ultimately, things could happen all throughout the day. So when I wake up in the morning, I always start with lemon water. And my wife now, we've been doing celery juice for a while. I don't know if you've heard of the celery juice craze, but anyways.
I haven't heard that one, no.
So if you follow the medical medium, he's all about celery juice. My wife follows him. I don't. So we do that in the morning. And then I typically grab a coffee. After that, I'll meditate, do some stretching, do some reading in the morning, depending. I don't necessarily set an alarm. I wake up between a certain time unless I really have to get up for something. So depending on how much time I have, do some reading of some sort. And then I might just check messages, like LinkedIn messages, Facebook messages, that sort of stuff. Yep. I don't really scroll through social media too often, but I do. People reach out and connect. So I'll do those messages just to get those off my plate in the morning. Yep. They're easy to do. And it's nice to kind of just check something off that's quick. And then after that, I usually get into my day. I make a coffee, I get into my day. I don't eat breakfast till later in the morning. So I kind of do like intermittent fasting. Yep. After supper, you don't eat, and then you don't eat till later in the morning. And then my day goes all over the place throughout the day. And then in the evening, I typically stop sometime between 5 and 5:30, do family time. Sometimes it's all of us. Sometimes it's just my son and I. If my wife has something going on, give her a little bit of a break because sometimes she's with him a lot more than I am. And after my son goes to bed, I go back to work for about an hour or so, and then maybe meditate and read before I go to bed.
Excellent. So if people want to get hold of you, Casey, where can they get hold of you?
The best place to go is just to my personal website, caseygray.com, CASEYGREY.com. And also check out our YouTube page of The Conscious Builder. We're putting all sorts of great content out there right now.
Excellent. And you've got a series coming up on The Conscious Builder?
We always update all of our projects, and we got a lot of really cool videos, and I'll answer questions, and I'll just come on and talk about different things in construction. But we have an official series that we're doing called the 3-Day Cottage. It won't be released till the spring, but we're starting to record it. We've had a couple teaser videos out there, and it's going to be a net zero cottage that we're helping a couple build in the Algonquin Highlands area here in Ontario.
Nice. Beautiful. So I'll put links to all of those in the show notes for the listeners. Final question. I love to ask my guests this. So you're up in Ottawa?
Yes.
What is your favorite restaurant in your area?
So favorite restaurant in Ottawa for myself is the Whale's Bone. And one of the reasons that is my favorite is because my sister used to be a chef there. She actually moved out east recently, but it's still an amazing restaurant. If you like seafood, if you like oysters, it's a place to go to. Like if you go east in Canada, you can just basically go get oysters wherever you want. But here anyways, that's my go-to place.
All right. So in Ottawa, if
not necessarily the healthiest place, but
hey, it's okay. The Whale's Bone, all things in moderation.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Casey, really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.